Well, let's talk about civil unions. So it was a Monday morning, December 20th, 1999.
I remember exactly where I was.
When the Supreme Court ruled that gay and lesbian couples must be granted the same benefits and privileges given married couples of the opposite sex. Where were you? What was your thought?
I was in the health department in Burlington having a meeting, and we of course called a hasty press conference as soon as we could after the meeting. I think we heard about it around 10 o'clock, and by noon we were arranging a press conference.
Today's Supreme Court decision hands the issue of same-sex marriage off to Vermont's legislature, which is ready to open a new session in 2 weeks from today.
I think the legislature will react by passing a domestic partnership bill and not a gay marriage bill. I'm also comfortable with that, and I frankly think that's the best thing for Vermont. So I actually think that it's a superior vehicle for everybody.
I knew that we couldn't do marriage. I knew that that wasn't going to pass. We couldn't get it through the legislature. I barely knew what a civil union was. I had, fortunately, a wonderful legal counsel who was still in the legislature, and she explained the whole business to me. And that's what I said I would support. And the interesting thing about that, even that was bipartisan. The person who wrote that decision was my appointee to the Supreme Court, who had been a 14-year Attorney General of the state of Vermont, Jeff Amistoway, who was a Republican and worked for Dick Snelling. The chairman of the committee that wrote the Civil Unions Bill was a Republican, and with a Democratic vice chair who was openly gay, one of the very few openly gay members of the legislature. So this was a team effort too. We did not divide so much along party lines on this one. It was, you know, how comfortable you were with something that had never been done before in America. And I've always believed that the important thing here is the rights, not the name. Now, calling it marriage means a lot to gay people, and I understand that and I respect that. But what we passed was the same as marriage. It just wasn't called that. We passed equal rights. There was not one right that you could have under the state of Vermont's law with a civil union that a married person couldn't have. Now, you couldn't have any of the federal rights, which of course we couldn't do anything about. But there is actually fundamentally no difference between Vermont's same-sex marriage bill that passed many years later than the civil unions bill that we ultimately passed in the legislature.
I assume that that is the decision that you made when you came to the veto of the same-sex marriage bill, because clearly the legislature felt very strongly about it. There were people in Vermont who felt very strongly about it, and yet your personal opinion was what led to that veto.
Yeah, Vermont was very divided. Polls showing about an even split. Some would have a slight majority one way or another. I had people come up to me and say, if you veto that bill, I'll never vote for you again. And I had people come up to me and say, if you don't veto that bill, I'll never vote for you again. So I thought, well, gosh, I can do what I really think is right. And I did.
The governor told reporters he doesn't typically announce his intentions like this so far ahead of time, but he said he thinks it's the only way to stop speculation about what his move may be.
I believe that the civil union law has afforded equal rights and benefits under state law to same-sex couples, and that should suffice. And I did it in a respectful way, recognizing that people have different points of view, and I had hoped that people on the other side of the question were as respectful as I was. Not all of them were, to be perfectly honest, but I did what I felt was right and let the process move forward.
You come to being a governor usually after years of experience, whether that's in private business or in the legislature or in some sort of policy role. And you bring with you all of those experiences and your personal beliefs as well. And I think any governor, regardless of what the issue is, has to weigh those personal beliefs with serving the people.
The governor always insisted that he was not going to impose his values on the legislature. He said from day one, we were not going to strong-arm anybody on this. We weren't going to demand the votes, you know, as some sort of loyalty to the governor. He said everybody is free to do what they want to do on this issue, and I think that takes courage to do that. I mean, he wasn't afraid of losing that vote. I mean, he had a different opinion than the legislature on that, but he wasn't afraid of losing that vote.
It wasn't a hard hard line on a policy question where it was clearly black or clearly white. This was one where it was all gray. And in this situation, Governor Douglas knew that whether it was overridden or not overridden, the process was important.